Hi guys, welcome back to another episode from TripleTopHat.
TripleTopHat? Wow. God, I love it when we fall the first hurdle. That's brilliant. Sets the tone for the rest of the video.
Yeah,
Triple hop twat.
Oh, fucking hell.
We're keeping this in.
No, we're not keeping this in. This is definitely getting edited out. It's getting edited out. I've been drinking. Anyway, hi guys, welcome to another episode of TripleTopHat, and I'm joined today by Ben and Jamie. Say hello, guys.
Hey up.
Evening.
In this episode, we're going to be focusing on the subject of terrain and basically all the different matters related to that. Before we get on to that, though, we just want to quickly touch base again on the announcement of the limited edition Catachan kernel that got released or announced by GW a couple of weeks ago, I believe. Was it now, Ben? I think.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, go on. Sorry.
It was a week or two on to. I mean, they announced this basically a unique Catachan kernel, basically Dylan from Predator. Even though now we might be getting like multiple head options, don't know why you choose anything but Dylan. But they were going to release this to their third-party distributors, like your local gaming hobby stores, that kind of thing, as a sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Sort of like a show of good faith to help them get revenue in, because obviously we're also from the lockdown. GW is big boy and has deep pockets, whereas other smaller stores might not. Yeah, so this was to help them.
Yeah, exactly. So on the surface of it, it was obviously quite a good gesture for a company like GW to be trying to do this for the smaller companies and shops. Since then, there's been a recent announcement that, or some reported news, that the actual number of models that have been shipped out to the various stores is actually little to none. So I know we've seen at the moment just a couple of articles, I believe, online stating that stores are only receiving 3 or 4 models, which obviously in the grand scheme of things, if you charge at what would be a normal rate for a model like this, isn't really going to be doing much in terms of helping the store out. So Ben, I'm going to throw back to you very quickly, because I think it was yourself, or was it you, Jamie, that first came across this particular piece of news?
Yeah, I spotted it earlier on, yeah.
So what is it that stores are actually doing then with these models when they receive them?
Basically, I think in the UK it retails for about 10 quid. So if you get 4, that's, I don't know, not a lot of profit you're going to make on that. So what they're doing is putting them on eBay, which is unfortunately what all of them are doing, more or less. So there's a bit of a bidding war going on. They're getting up to prices of in excess of 100, 150 quid in some cases.
Yeah, so obviously not ideal. And to be honest, I mean, when we first got news of this, we didn't expect it to be, or to have this sort of results. I think that's fair to say. Would you not agree, Ben? I think we were all probably expecting there to be a fairly decent supply for each of the stores that were going to be sent some of these models.
I'll preference what I'm about to say with this story is literally, we've only just, I think this just today sort of thing. It's in its early infancy. And we've had one or two reports online of, certain stores getting only a few of these models. We don't know, because I personally think that this isn't GW's normal MO. If we're playing devil's advocate and this is all true and GW are the bad guys, I can't see it, because why would you just ship out a couple of models?
I can't see they stand to gain anything from it.
No, exactly. They stand to gain nothing from it. I mean, even as a show of like good faith, it's not, by doing this, it'll generate more bad publicity than good. So it's not even, it doesn't even work out in that respect of like good publicity, because it's usually overturned by the fact, well, these guys are going to have to put them on eBay for ridiculous prices. So the hobbyist is going to lose out at the end of the day. I think this developing story is more what's going to happen. Personally, I think if this is true, it's going to be more of a distribution or a supply issue more than anything.
Yeah, well, it wasn't that long ago when GW did say, when they announced that they were going to be opening up some of their factories again, that it was going to be in a sort of limited capacity. They weren't going to bring them back online in the full capacity again. So what they're able to produce in these factories is going to be very small to what they would normally do, and obviously they do have other orders to fulfill as well. So it could well be at this stage, and that's, I think, what you've stated there, Ben, is the thing to take away from it. It is only the initial reports that we are getting at the moment. We are hoping to. I have tried to contact a few of the various stores around the UK that we'd like to use as well, to see if we can get any comment from them. Haven't been able to get in touch with them just yet, due just to the lateness of when we actually found out and the time of the day it was. So hopefully we'll find out a little bit more in the week from them, and maybe even from GW, just to get their standing on it, because no one's really gone out, from what I've seen anyway, no one's actually gone out and actually got GW's take on this, their side of the story. So there could well be a very good explanation for this, and I would expect there to be a very good explanation. So we'll hopefully find out more, and we'll have some more news to bring back to you in the next podcast. So stay tuned really on that.
We'll stay on the fence for now.
Yeah. Don't go out and spend over £100 on Dylan from Predator. Yeah. I mean, it's a nice model, but don't do it.
Yeah, no, it's a ridiculous amount of money for a single model. But ultimately, it is your own money, so spend it as you see fit. But coming back on to, or starting on the main topic that we want to cover in this particular podcast then, which is talking about terrain and everything that comes along with that. So really, I guess I'd start off by just asking the both of you, what is it that you look for in terrain? Because you both have your own terrain.
Yeah, terrain is, for me, it's the third player in the game. I mean, you can have your nicely painted armies, big collections and all that, but if you're putting if there's no terrain, it takes you right out of the game, doesn't it?
Yeah, so the immersive side of it isn't quite there. You don't have it,
I mean, you can get some boxes, flip them upside down, draw some windows on them, and cut some doorways in it. But it really does shatter the sort of illusion we're trying to create with 40K gaming. So for me, more recently than when I first started the hobby, when I first started collecting again, you and me, Chris, we went halves and quite a bit of terrain, more accurately the mat, the sort of roll up mat that a lot of people do now. It's like same sort of stuff like mouse pads are made of. Yeah. Basically, they're easy to keep, roll in, roll out, that kind of thing. And I know a lot of people who use sort of third party trade tend to go for the what's it's like laser cut sort of MDF. I think that's quite popular.
Well, I think there's a variety of different materials, especially more recently now with modern technology, that you can obviously look at and go for. But specifically, what is it that you look for in terrain? So I know you've talked about, obviously, you want it to be immersive, so it all adds to that, and the kind of the feel, the narrative of the game that you're obviously you're having it at that moment. What else is it that you look for, though?
Mate, I tend to go, like I say, recently I've sort of got quite snooty, and I've gone for a quality in the sort of terrain that creates depth, because those mats only roll on, they're quite flat, but I've recently bought a few of the Forge World tiles and got them painted up, and they look brilliant. The quality on them is amazing. You've got lots of little details on there, and it's just nice to have on the board. I mean, I've played a few games with you guys, I think you'll agree. It's really good quality stuff.
Yep, fair point. Jay, throw over to you. Same question.
I have made a list of the 4 sort of influencing factors that I think about when I buy terrain, and I've prioritized them, well, based on my personal preference. But once I've gone through them, I want you guys to prioritize them based on your personal preference to see if it's any different.
Sure.
Okay, so first and foremost for me, I've got practicality. Basically, I don't have the largest amount of storage space, so it's got to be fairly sort of modular and easy to store away and stack, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, totally on board with you there. Yeah, I can completely appreciate that. Space is a given. Well, it's it's a nice to have, isn't it? I mean, if you've got your own place which has its own dedicated room, maybe you've got your own gaming table there.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's this ideal, isn't there? It'd be great to have like a $5,000 gaming table and a big room to put it in and like 10 resin tiles to stick in it, but it's just not realistic for a lot of people.
No, I should say it's not practical.
Space is the commodity, isn't it? And at the end of the day, not a lot of people have it. It's gonna be like the major downfall when a lot of the nicer things that you might want to have.
Okay, so that was number one. Number two is aesthetics. How it looks, it's got to look nice. Like you say, it's an immersive thing. You want to sort of sink yourself into it when you're playing a game, so it's got to look the part.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'd say that's number one for me. It's got to look nice.
Yeah, I thought that'd be number one for you, somehow. Okay, number three for me is durability. It's got to stand the test of time because obviously it's not the cheapest thing to buy.
No, that's very true. Yep.
And depending on what material it's made out of, some terrain is more durable than others, a lot in some cases. So yeah, it's a bit further down the list, but it's still there. Number four is cost, because obviously you've got to buy it. But to me, it's at the bottom of the list because it's stuff you generally are only going to buy once, and you're going to get a few years of use out of it.
Yeah. I'd agree with that as well. It's like the same. It's the same argument we make with 40K, like price versus what you're getting anyway. You build up these collections over a long time, and like you just said, Jay, with some of this terrain, you need to buy it once, and so us.
Yeah, I mean, if space were no option for me, aesthetics would be at the top of the list. But if you buy 6 2x2 tiles, you need somewhere to put them.
Yep. And obviously, you don't necessarily live on your own, so. You've got to
explain to the other half why half of your spare room is full of hobby supplies and equipment.
Yes, exactly. I mean, going back to the point of cost as well, I guess the benefit of terrain over, you made the point, Ben, about when we purchase models or units, they're a one-off cost, really, or they're a one-time purchase, the most of the time, unless you need to just increase the size of your squad, But with terrain, with those squads, all I would say is obviously they get updated a lot more regularly than terrain features will that get released from GW. So it's kind of even more of a one-off purchase with terrain. So you probably don't, for me anyway, I don't mind spending the money on terrain because I know it's not going to be something that's going to get updated in the near future. I mentioned in the previous podcast about what the issue I have with wanting to buy models, whether to go third party or buy from GW, is the fact that if I buy from GW, if it's an old sculpt, is it going to be only a couple of weeks, months, whatever, until they release a new version of it, in which case I've just wasted my money, or I'd feel like I've wasted my money and time on this older sculpt. With terrain, though, that isn't quite the same issue. I don't know if you guys agree with that.
No, I agree.
When it comes to third party, it's nobody's bothered, are they, about terrain? You can kick up a fuss about third party models, but when it comes to terrain, it's fair game, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, yeah. And that was one of the other sort of areas I wanted to touch on slightly later on. So we'll try and circle back round to that maybe in a bit. So is that the 4 sort of major factors then that you look for, did you say, Jay?
Yeah, they're the 4 things that I primarily think about.
And what order, just to clarify, did you put those in?
So it was practicality, visuals, aesthetics, durability, then cost.
Okay. Ben, throw over to you before I give my particular verdict on that. What order do you put those 4 into?
Well, I'd say cost is the bottom. Like we've all just said, these things are a one-off purchase, and like I say, these things aren't going to get reinvented that often. Well, I can't see them getting reinvented. Some of these things get reinvented ever. I mean, I know some of the Citadel terrain kits have been around for donkey's years, and it's not going to change because they serve their purpose, and there's no more evolution needed in that particular product. So cost would be at the bottom for me.
Yep.
Durability would be also at the bottom, second from the bottom as well, because as of right now, I'm quite careful with all my terrain. I don't tend to move it around that much because, the amount of game, it's not getting hammered on a regular basis, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And with the tiles that I've got, I've just finished, well, not done, only recently, hobby-wise, finished varnishing them. So that should protect them as well. So there are routes where you can protect these things from, general wear and tear, like say varnish and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
As long as you're not kicking them up and down the stairs, they should, last the test of time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who knows? That might change in the future. If we start playing more games and we start moving stuff from house to house more often, you might find out what's durable and what's not.
Yeah, and other people who play more regularly than we do might say, might put durability slightly higher up on the list.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting if you're listening to this and you do play quite frequently and you have your own terrain. How does your terrain stand up to obviously frequent use? Does it tend to last? Just give us your sort of feedback on that. What you think? What order would you put those 4 points into as well?
Well, every time I go down to like a hobby store or Games Workshop, or local Games Workshop, you can look at the terrain there, and that stuff is getting hammered on a daily basis. It's not falling apart. It doesn't look ramshackle. I cast my eyes over it. Fair enough, the paint jobs and stuff, it might be so simple, but they serve a purpose. And I've never noticed like paint chipping or anything like that, because I'm guessing they like I say varnishes and stuff and look after it. So
to me, all well maintained as well, to be honest.
Yeah. They have to be with GW stores, don't they? Because they're trying to sell the product, so they can't have it where your models and your terrain and the boards that you use, which obviously you get all your customer base coming in, either you're trying to sell it to potential new customers, new fans, or it's to get people to come in and play on it. You need it looking the best, otherwise it's not.
Let's be honest, if you went into a store and the table was knackered and chipped, you'd think, what are the players like? Are they going to be careful with models, that kind of thing?
I mean, it's not just models you put on these things. I mean, you've got the fucking 79 books you need to fucking play your army. You've got to put them somewhere. It's a dice that's getting hammered on there all the time. So yeah,
trying to present a nice image, isn't it?
Yeah. So it costs durability, and then what would you put class space under again? Practicality, Jay?
Yeah.
Right now, for me, space, it would be a second one, because these things do take up a lot of room, and that's why you said, Jim, you'd like lean towards the more modular stuff. You can break it down, put it in a box, and file it away. Don't have to think about it. But the stuff. Yeah. Some of the stuff I like, it ain't that simple. I mean, Christ, I'd love for GW just to make a set you can clip together or magnetize together, that kind of thing. That'd be amazing. It'd be brilliant.
Yeah, I've looked at those tiles and I love them, and I'd love to have 6 of them, but I've thought about what kind of storage solution I'd have for 6 of those, and it'd be like some kind of weird vinyl rack shelvage kind of solution, wouldn't it? Where would you put it?
Mate, I've looked into the same thing, and I'll get into that in a bit if we can come back to that. But yeah, just generalization. Storage is a big issue for this stuff. It is, because you don't want to damage it, so you want to store it safe. But a lot of people just don't have that option. Just don't have the option. Don't have the luxury of the space. You know what I mean? It's something you take for granted. So a lot of people just don't have that, which is a shame. And number one for me would be aesthetics. It's got to look part. You can put a really nice painted miniature on top of a cardboard box, and it'll just be a really nice printed miniature on a cardboard box. But you could put it on a piece of really well done terrain, and it'll look like it's part of the universe, sort of thing.
Yeah, completely agree. To be honest, Ben, coming over to me now, I would say that I'm exactly the same as you in terms of order of importance. So yeah, practicality would be aesthetics definitely at the top. It's all about trying to create that look and feel that you're going for, that fits in with the army that you've spent so much time painting and obviously so much money on. So yeah, aesthetics definitely sits at the top. Practicality then comes as a close second. You do have to think about your available space. That's if you're fortunate enough to actually have your own, table and area to play on at home. I can imagine a lot of people don't.
A lot of people have this sort of thing they have to set up every time they do it, don't they? And then it gets filed away somewhere till the next time they need it.
Yeah, they might not even have that luxury. They might not even be able to play in their own pad. So yeah, I think practicality, has to come second. Durability and cost. Durability, would probably go third, and then cost last. I guess I'm fortunate enough that I if as and when I want to purchase terrain, I probably can afford to spend a little bit of money on it. So I'm quite fortunate in that sense. So for me, it's not a major factor. I do obviously have to still bear it in mind. I don't want to spend stupid money on things. If I feel like I'm paying over and above what it should be. But yeah, I'd say that's my order for those 4 sort of areas, I guess.
I mean, like I say, it's
Probably
a
our
lot.
cost is at the bottom for all 3 of us, though, isn't it?
I think that's the hill we all have to just accept dying on when you play this hobby. Sometimes it's going to cost a little bit, but
There's a lot of cheaper options out there.
Yeah, there are. But I think it's just one of those things you just got to get used to, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a cheap hobby anyway. So I could be wrong with this, but it'd be interesting to know if a lot of people who play the hobby kind of put that to one side. They've already accepted that almost as a given. They might want to, with terrain and your boards, etc. That might be the area that you look to try and save money on, because you want to spend the majority of your hard-earned cash on the actual models that you're collecting.
Yeah, I think it's an app for a lot of people, isn't it? You want to get your army sorted first.
Yes.
Yeah.
Terrain definitely comes after, your army, and sort of purchasing what it is that you want for that. So that's good then. So you kind of answered what you both look for then when you go to purchase terrain. That kind of moves on really to, little things like, do you look for it to be painted, unpainted? Does that come into the equation, or again, does that not really matter?
Just before we say that, Chris, out of interest, I'd love to know, just on a whole, in comparison to the rest of their sort of like range that they produce and sell, I'd love to know how much of GW's sales figures are actually made of field buying terrain. So I bet it's not a lot. Yeah,
I mean, again, it's probably not readily available information, is it? So I can't imagine it being a huge amount, and it kind of goes on to the whole point of, unlike the models, there really is no rule with making your own terrain, buying third party. There is no rule there. There's no
stigma against third party, is there? So GW aren't going to be particularly bothered about people buying it from other places, are they?
No, exactly.
No.
So they haven't really got to make any to compete.
Yep. So I don't imagine it'll be a huge amount. I think what GW do have going for them, and this is another sort of part of the conversation, I would say that whereas with third-party models, you can get some really, really, really nice sculpts and variants of the squad or unit that it is that you're after. That kind of sit on a par almost with GW. So there's a definite sort of competition element there. With terrain, GW definitely sits on top of that hill. I haven't really seen any other terrain that comes close to the quality, matched with the cost as well, because it's not a huge amount of money that you're paying for, or at least I find anyway, from GW when you do purchase it through them. So I would say that GW definitely have that going for them. They are on the top of that particular hill in terms of quality. I don't know if
the price
you guys.
I agree with you, mate. I agree with you, but the price matched it as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, you get what you pay for at the end of the day, and I personally think it's completely justified. The only this is why I asked the question about, do you look for it to be painted or unpainted? The thing I don't particularly like the idea of with terrain is that you've got the construction element of it, but then you've also got the painting element as well that you've got to do. My time is only finite. I only have so much time that I can invest into this particular hobby. I have other things that I'm obviously interested in. For other people, you might sway more towards Warhammer, be it Sigmar or whatever version of the game that it is that you're playing. So for me, I only have so much time though that I can invest into it, and I don't really want to spend that time painting terrain when I have other things I want to paint. And I'm unfortunately in this constant cycle of, once I've finished all my army, I can then focus on terrain. I always end up purchasing more and more stuff, and I don't know whether that's something that I'm sure other people are guilty of that as well. You keep telling yourself, I'm not going to buy anything else until I've painted everything, and then something always comes along, like recently for me, ended up after we talked about it in the last episode, ended up purchasing some more third-party models. After telling myself I wasn't going to buy anything else, so I'm just adding to the list of stuff that I need to paint. So I don't really want to be having to paint terrain, so it's sort of the time investment that you have to put towards it. Again, throw over to you. First of all, Jay, what's your particular opinion on painted or unpainted?
I don't know about you two, but I'm not that bothered about the painting quality of terrain. I know, like you guys have done with yours, you've taken a few different sprays to it, maybe dry brushed it a bit, and it looks fine. So in terms of time investment, I don't know how long it took you to do that.
Together, I don't think it took us all that long at all. And in a way,
the building's not.
Yeah, I don't think it took us long, did it?
No,
And
It looks
not really.
fine, doesn't it? You don't spend that much time in a game looking at it.
But why is that? Why do you... I mean, I've got my own opinions on it, but why do you guys think, touching on what you've just said there, Jay, why is it that only just doing a fairly quick, simple paint job on terrain is more than good enough most of the time?
Because
it's on the periphery, isn't it? You never spend that much
Exactly.
time looking at it, but if you just have a quick scan of the table, it looks pretty good at a glance.
Yes.
Yeah, it's the frame of the picture. You don't go to the Louvre. I think it's the Louvre in Paris to look at the frame around all the great artworks in there. You look at the actual picture. The frame's just there for it to sit nicely.
Yeah, but you'd certainly notice if they didn't have frames, wouldn't you?
Oh yeah, if the fucking half the frames had been a dog shit, I'd probably notice it.
I think some of them actually are. Not, don't it?
Fine art, yeah, fine art. But that's exactly what I was going to make. The point I was going to make. Sorry, Jay. Yeah, it really does sit on the peripheral when it comes to obviously what you're focusing on the board. Your eye is immediately drawn to the units, so I think that's why you can get away with just doing a rough and ready sort of paint job on terrain, as long as it obviously doesn't look too shit. But the techniques that we applied with the spray cans, we didn't even use GW official paint. We were just using fairly cheap spray paint that we got out of Halfords, and it was probably good enough in the end. So yeah, that's a fair point. Ben, coming to you, are you bothered about it being painted or unpainted?
Touch on the terrain I bought for a second there.
Go on.
Because that came pre-painted, didn't it? I bought it with the intention of repainting it at some point, but I never did. And it looks fine, doesn't it? It serves a purpose.
Yeah. And it suits the aesthetic. And it kind of... And this is something else I wanted to touch on after you mentioned it at the start of the podcast, Ben, about... Do you go for tiles? Do you go for the gaming mats? All that kind of adds into the look and feel of the board in which you're playing on. So the terrain that you purchased, Jay, fits quite nicely with the game mat that you purchased.
Well, yeah, because that's actually part of the same set.
Oh, was it from the actual same supplier?
It was the same site I bought the mat from, yeah. It's all part of the same set. They've got several sets that go with several different mats.
Perfect. Yeah. So it's quite convenient in that case then. But it all adds to that look and feel that you're going for. And it suits, I would say anyway, it suits your army.
And on the whole, it wasn't actually that expensive to do. It depends on your perspective, I suppose. But
how much in total did you spend on the terrain features then? Not including the mat, just the terrain.
The terrain, I think there was a bundle for about 120 quid, and I got a lot with it, to be fair. It's certainly enough, well, more or less enough for a standard 6x4 table. Obviously, you can always use more, but it was a good start.
Yeah.
And it's fairly cheap. It was decent sort of, I think it was molded resin, pre-painted, so you don't have to do a lot with it.
Yeah, yeah. And do you feel that you've got enough terrain now to kind of suit that particular aesthetic that you're going for, or would you like to purchase more still to try and, kind of build?
It'd be nice to have some alternatives, because one thing I was going to mention was one of the things I miss about playing on your board, Ben, is you've got these building blocks, and it's quite easy to get a cover save if you get inside one of them, but you'll probably go through I don't have a lot of stuff on my table that will give you a cover save.
No, the stuff that you have is more line of sight blocking, isn't it? I would say.
So I'd like to get more sort of maybe some platforms or buildings that you can actually hide in.
Yeah.
Obviously, I wouldn't put it all on the table at the same time, because then it would be a bit busy.
Yeah. Well, again, this touches on something that we covered in the last podcast about terrain, or it was more to do with house rules. again, it's what's the benefit of having it? And for me, why I would always sway to having more terrain. One, it's about the look and feel as well. And again, you can adapt it as you see fit. You might have a particular game type or narrative that you're trying to create. So it might be where you have one side of the board is a destroyed city, or it could be a base, a bunker, or whatever, and the other side is kind of like open feel with maybe some craters, etc., to kind of give you some of the cover save elements that you need. It might be all part of the mission that you're trying to build, if you know what I mean. But what's the benefit of it? I would say you've got to kind of have it to correct some of the imbalances that are currently in the game in regards to shooting focused armies compared to melee focused. I know we talked about this, like I said before, but again, what do you guys think? What's the benefit of having terrain?
Well, I always wanted to play. I know I've mentioned this to you guys before. I've always wanted to. I wish I had enough decent terrain to play good Cities of Death, because I'd love the idea of having quite a dense board of terrain. If you know what I mean, that it'd be quite difficult to find a decent firing arc.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. So you'd be dealing with streets, like firing down a street rather than like covering the entire board, because there's going to be a building in the way. But the issue with that is, I mean, like I said, GW makes their models because they look nice, not practicality. I can't imagine Jamie being able to move his monolith down some of these streets.
I was just going to mention that, actually. I'll go on to that in a minute.
Yeah.
So for me, Chris, I mean, I think having a decent painted piece of terrain is, I enjoy it. Like I say, then it just makes the entire thing feel more fancy, and I do like a little bit of fancy.
Cool. Okay. Now, moving on then to material. Are you particularly bothered about what it's made of? I know we've already touched on this slightly, and it's all to do with the aesthetic, I guess. But what would you accept and what wouldn't you accept?
I know a lot of people.
Can I field this one?
Sure.
Go for it.
I've got a list of materials that terrain can be made out of. Feel free to add some or correct me if you can think of any others. But at the top, I've got molded resin and plastic, which I think has a higher cost point, but also probably arguably the best aesthetic.
And that's in keeping with what GW sells.
Yeah.
Or in line with what GW sells, rather. Cool.
Okay, and I've got laser cut MDF, which is a fairly new thing. And if you look at some of the more modern offerings these days, it can actually be pretty good, and it's pretty modular as well.
I don't know about you guys, but I think I'd find that really jarring.
It can be a bit hit and miss because it's so angular. It doesn't particularly look realistic, so it breaks the immersion, or at least some of the examples that I've seen.
Though, doesn't it?
Say that again. Sorry.
It looks better for certain settings, though, doesn't it? Like, it's great for cities.
It can be. I think it really does depend on the quality of the product and the level of detail, because I have seen some laser cut MDF terrain features. It could be bases, it could be almost half boards or full boards, and I've not been overly convinced by it. And it's also not particularly cheap, some of the stuff that I've come across. So,
but the one,
don't get me wrong, there is some really dross stuff out there.
Yeah.
I suppose the one benefit to the laser cut MDF is a lot of it is you can like slot it together, and once you're flying it all down,
if you get like creative with magnets or whatever, you can probably set it up so that you can take it all apart when you're done and flat pack it.
Mm-hmm.
But that for me, yeah, that is obviously a real benefit, because then it's the practicality of it and being able to store it away. But it's also then just added time involved with trying to get it set up to work like that as well. I mean, from some of the MDF stuff that I've seen, you don't necessarily need to magnetize it, because the idea is that it slots into each other like a jigsaw almost, so you can kind of build it that way. But then it creates these, like I've said, these unrealistic edges, and it kind of goes back a little bit. It reminds me a lot of the Warhammer terrain that you could purchase, 15 years ago when I was a kid.
The old stuff.
Yeah, the old stuff. It kind of reminds me of that, which is, in a way, quite just old-fashioned and a little bit tacky now compared to, and that's probably just I've become a little bit I've become a little bit of a snob when it comes to the look and feel of the models and what there is available from GW. So it's difficult to settle for anything less, I think.
Well, I suppose when you've drank White Lightning for a bit and then you go onto a nice cider, it's hard to go back to White Lightning, isn't it?
I mean, yeah, that is one particular analogy of it, yeah.
Unless you really like White Lightning because it's cheap.
Yeah. I don't know.
For anyone who doesn't know what White Lightning is, it's probably the cheapest cider you can get that's legally safe to drink.
It's probably not safe to drink. I would. Jake,
I just have a gander at that picture I've put in the chat there. That's what I think it'd be good for, just as like a base for a board that then you can then build on.
But my personal opinion, Jay. I mean, yes, I can't explain in words my problem with it, but I do have I can't see a Hive Tyrant on there. I can't see a load of Gaunts on there, if you get what I mean.
The thing is, with that particular, as Jay said, that sets itself up as a nice base. It's a foundation for everything else that you put on.
Yeah,
what you then still need to then purchase and to kind of supplement that is then the terrain to go on the top to make your models blend in. So yeah, I mean that actually in terms of quality is pretty good. The other thing to sort of point out with a lot of the MDF stuff is obviously, yeah, it's all cut for you. You've got the shapes that you need, but you then do need to also then paint it to make it sort of fit into place. So I guess if I'm more concerned with the amount of time I'm going to be investing into the terrain. If I've got to buy terrain which I'm going to be painting anyway, I will pretty much always sway towards purchasing the GW stuff.
A lot of people say, I really enjoyed painting that model. It was a real passion project. I've never heard anybody say, oh, painting that tile, I loved it. It was great. I loved every minute of it. I mean, I've painted my own tiles, as you guys know, and, you know, it can be a bit of a fucking chore. But, you know...
Well, they are big, aren't they? Let's be honest.
They are big, yeah. And I've done the best job I can with them. But like I say, you don't get as much fulfillment as you would do for nicely painting a model. Don't get me wrong. When you get the tile down and stuff's on top and it all comes together, then you're like, yeah, you know what? You know, I'm glad I did that. But no one ever says, oh, I really enjoyed painting that terrain.
No, I can't ever recall anyone saying that to me either. But yeah, I mean, looking at that, Jay, I'm sold by it. It looks great, and I would have no
issue. If money was no object, and I could have a board set up that I'd never have to change, I'd seriously look at something like that for the base of it, and then I'd probably get some more like resin or plastic stuff to put on top of it, and then I'd try and tie all together with a paint scheme.
Yeah, with this sort of stuff, it's the same with the tiles pretty much the same with the tiles that you have, Ben. If I was going to invest into something like that as a base, rather than say something like a game mat, which you can roll up and then take off and you put somewhere else, I would only really consider that if I had the benefit and the funding to actually purchase and have a gaming table which has that sort of inset section. That way you can just leave it in the table, store it away, and sort of there's no having to sort of pack it all up afterwards. You can just leave it in the table there, so you can just uncover it again and start playing with it again on the next game. That's the only sort of time when I would probably consider this sort of.
Yeah, well, like I said before, we live in this place called reality, so I think a game mat is probably going to be the option for a lot of people.
Yeah, more than likely. Yeah. And the benefit of gaming mats, I know this is something that we can discuss a little bit more on in a future podcast, but the benefit of gaming mats, I guess, is the fact that you can buy I mean, you even get them double-sided now, so you have one particular theme on one side, you could have like Desolate Cityscape on one, and then Snowy Tundra or something on the other. So yeah.
And you'd have to buy 2 sets of terrain as well.
Yeah, there is that. So, yeah, that's the kind of the benefits of having the gaming mats. But like I said, if you had the money and the space to do it, I think overall, in terms of the immersion and the look and feel of it, I would probably prefer to buy the actual hard sort of physical foundations, like the gaming tiles. I mean, the gaming tiles are, again, talking on this a little bit.
The problem I've got with the gaming tiles is I don't know how many there are, but you are kind of limited by what they supply, and I'm not sure they all fit together, do they?
No, 2x2, I think.
Yeah, I don't mean physically fit together. I mean like aesthetically fit together.
Aesthetically fit together. Well, this is the thing, though, isn't it? I mean, they do also.
How many are on offer actually? How many do they sell?
I think GW Games Workshop do 2 different sets. I mean, I could probably go off and quickly check, but I think they do like a cityscape one and a sort of like, fantasy grassland sort of thing, with like skulls coming out the ground and, all that.
That would be at least 12 tiles then.
At least 12 tiles, yeah. And then obviously if you go over to Forge World, you've got more variety actually in Forge World. I mean, you've got the cityscape ones, which I've got 2 of. You've got the industrial sector ones, which is like a big generator and something else. That's 2 of them. They kind of go together with cityscape ones, but you can paint it whatever you want because obviously they're blank resin when you get them. You've also got the ones that are, it's like a bastion sort of thing. It's like a space marine sort of like defense point. You've got the helipad one. You've got the massive gun emplacement one, which comes with like its own massive turret.
You do have the one, I don't know if you've already said this, sorry, Ben. You do have the one which has the, is it the Thunderhawk gunship?
Yeah, the Crash Thunderhawk gunship, yeah, you've got that one.
I mean, the benefit of those tiles is that they also have, to a degree anyway, the added terrain built into them.
Yeah, but then you encounter the problem with storage again, don't you? If they're big and they're thick as well.
Yep. And like I said, I would only ever really consider that if I am in a fortunate enough position where I have something like a gaming table, which I could just leave that tile within the table and I don't have to worry about storing it.
I must admit, I'm the same way because they do an Ekron one that I would very much like to have, and I definitely have that in the table.
It looks amazing.
I think that's the tallest one they do. I mean, the one I've got is at least 4 inches thick at its highest point. You can't exactly slot that into somewhere, can you?
And how much are each of those tiles, Ben?
I think they're cropping it around £80.
And you need 6 of them.
You need 6 of them.
That's 480 quid. If you consider that 480 quid, and you still, it does have some of the inbuilt terrain included with it, I guess, but you still need to add terrain on top of it, ideally, to just improve on it and to also make the game a little bit more fair, so it isn't just straight line of sight on everything that's on the table.
Well, Chris,
over and above the cost implication, that means you've also got to paint 24 square feet. Think about that.
Well, Chris, I'm just looking now, and the regular ones, the urban ones which I've got are £84 each, but they do a bundaloo, which is 480, so you're saving yourself about 20 quid.
Yeah, so what I've just said then.
To be fair, looking at this now, you've got the industrial ones, the generator and the manufacturing ones, they're 100 quid each, but they've got a lot more detail on them. Christ, I don't know why, but Jamie's Tomb World one is £101 because
so they're not even a set price, and that might be to do with the fact that obviously it is quite tall, so it might be more material. I don't know where the.
I guess I don't know what the rest of them are like, but that one does have its own rules.
Oh yeah, the one with the gun. Look at this now. The Realm of Battle Imperial Primus readout is £137. That is the most expensive pile they do, but it does come with a turbo laser. So,
Yeah.
Well,
big lasers.
Going back to the 4 points earlier that you made, Jay, about what you look for when you go to purchase terrain. Cost would be quite low. However, those in terms of aesthetics are pretty high up there, and obviously the overall quality, the durability of them, etc. But knowing that I have to spend 480 quid plus just to get the foundations, not even the terrain that sits on top of it, that immediately puts me off. I personally think that is more designed for kind of like your gaming clubs, your hobby halls, where you're getting people to basically pay towards coming in and using that terrain.
You're absolutely minted.
Yeah.
I'll say this, guys. I really appreciate the sort of... How can I say this? You could put your models on a rollout mat with a little bits of terrain sky down there, and it's fine. But if you're putting your models on like a piece of terrain like those tiles, which have various layers and quite, is asymmetrical the right word? Where you can like run down streets, jump onto back, like it's all built in. It's very...
It's got more of a verticality to it.
That's it. Yeah, I appreciate it a whole lot more.
Yeah, I must admit you brought both of them over in the last game we played, didn't you? And they looked really good.
Yeah,
on the table.
Yeah. Can't complain against the quality of them. They're amazing, and you do get it does feel a lot better or look a lot better when you do have your models on top of it. Yeah, it's being okay with that heavy investment, and it is a big heavy investment for that sort of terrain. Now, interestingly, Jay, just quickly coming back to the example that you gave before, did you get any sort of cost for that? Or have any idea of something similar, what that would cost to get almost, or pretty much a full table's worth of base level for MDF laser cut terrain?
I'm sure I could find out.
So we'll come back to that maybe.
Yeah. I'll tell you what I've obviously just looking around for terrain, because I've been with the Forgeal website coming back up. I've been just browsing the internet in between painting and whatnot. Actually, if you go on to things like websites like Etsy, and I've shared a link with you guys, obviously you can see it. With the advent of 3D printing and people getting their own 3D prints and whatnot, people are building their own terrain, and some of it looks nice. This guy here has made his own sort of like containment unit, and he's put an LED light in it. That's mint.
Yeah, that is cool. And that's kind of maybe the next stage of the model production, is more easily incorporating things like lighting to make it look even more realistic. Because LED technology's come on so far now, it's not particularly difficult, I imagine, to try and look at ways of incorporating lighting features into your models with batteries that can be easily either charged or swapped out. Just to add to the overall look and feel of them. I mean, that could just be blue sky thinking, and it's not really realistic, but it's very much interesting.
I think with that kind of thing, Chris, you're looking at less for people who just want to play games, because to get a full effect of, let's say, if some guy made a board where all the street lamps were LED lit, I think you're only going to get the benefit of that in a sort of like dimly lit room. But I think if you're making a diorama, then the sky's the limit, isn't it? You can go absolutely nuts with it.
Yeah, that is very true, and it's not something I actually thought about. Yeah, the idea of having LED lighting in your models to make them look all fancy is nice, but when you're actually playing a game, you need to be able to see what you're rolling, what you're reading. So you probably, or you should have a lot of additional lighting in your space or in the room that you're playing in, so that you can actually see what it is you're doing.
Lots of people have tried it, haven't they? And it looks great in a vacuum, but it's not very practical.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't really. It doesn't really work for the actual game itself. But on the 3D printed subject, Ben, this is something that again I wanted to touch on. I came across this. If you just bear with us while I link it, see if I can actually add it in.
Anytime today, Chris.
I know.
Just waiting on you.
I know.
Just going back to that MDF question while he's mucking about. That particular thing that I showed you, actually, I think that is probably going to be a full 6x4.
That's 6x4?
No, I don't think it's quite the same one. But it is all modular, like I said. But for a 4x4, it's about 195 quid. So you can imagine an extra £100 on top of that. So about 300 quid for a full 6x4 layout. Which isn't that bad.
No, I suppose it's not that bad now. I mean, that's, like I say,
together how you want it. You haven't got to, stick with the default.
Yes, and it's modular. That's
not too bad.
That's the thing, isn't it? You can flat pack it if you wanted to, if you were so inclined.
Compared to the other tiles or the cost of the actual official tiles, that's quite. it's definitely something worth considering anyway and looking into. I've just posted an item into the chat.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now.
So that is a website where you can actually download the plans to 3D print yourself all of that.
Yeah, I saw stuff like this when I was looking at it. And they'll sell you the plans, won't they?
Well, that was actually free. You could download that without any cost. Yeah. So
really,
yeah, the cost just comes into finding the material and also the printer, I guess, and whoever needs to do it. Unless you're in the good old position of being able to do it yourself. But that, I think, in terms of quality of design, is excellent. And if you do have the means of, getting that printed, I would definitely consider that, because the cost is just going to come way down if you. I mean, then again, I say that I don't know how much it is in terms of the material to actually go about producing this sort of stuff. I've never had anything.
It's a hell of a lot cheaper than it was a few years ago, isn't it?
Yeah. So it's definitely worth looking into. The fact that you can just readily get these designs online, people have uploaded them, and if you want to support the particular artist, you can give them a donation, but otherwise they're free. I think that's really good quality.
Yeah. Speaking of obviously terrain and storage is an issue. With the mats, you can roll them up. The case is relatively small. You could put that in a cupboard. With a lot of third-party terrain, you can flat pack it, or put it in a nice box and store it away. GW sell these tiles, okay, because they obviously, want people to ideally use their terrain. They're a business, they want to do that, but they don't sell a bag for them or a storage unit for them. They used to, as far as I'm aware, but they don't anymore. And I think that's really weird. I mean, surely, if you're flogging people these tiles, you want to try and also, why don't you use our handy dandy sort of bag? Just it's got padded on the inside. You can just slot the tiles in there. Bing, bang, bosh. They don't sell them anymore.
I don't know. Supply and demand. Maybe there was no demand for them.
Yeah.
Going back to that question again, how much they actually sell, I bet selling those tiles is really, really minuscule in comparison to everything else GW do.
I know last time we were down at Warhammer World, I tried to find one of those Necron tiles to have a look at, but they hadn't got one. They'd sold the one that they'd got.
Yeah, we went down to Warhammer World, the heart and soul of Warhammer in the world, and they sold the only model of this particular range that they got.
They sold the one.
They sold the one. I can't even look at it. Oh yeah, we only had the one, and we didn't expect anyone to buy it, so it's gone.
That particular type of thing, though, I imagine is pretty much it's made
to order.
Yeah.
Well, you'd think that, but if it was made on order, because it's Forge World stuff, it'd say made to order. Because I don't know if you guys can remember, they've taken off, as far as I'm aware, unless I'm looking in the right place. Remember, Forge World used to sell that entire Citadel Fortress thing. It's like a huge barricade, like a massive gate that a Baneblade could fit in and out of.
No.
It was like over a grand.
Was it?
Yeah. It was made to order. It was huge. I think if you go to the big diorama, obviously, if anyone's ever been to Warhammer World, they've got this huge diorama where Chaos are fighting Ultramarines and Grey Knights and whatnot. There's I think the main barricade to the Imperial City. I think it's that.
I think I can remember that now. Yeah.
It was huge. It was over $1,000. Yeah, that was made to order because obviously it's fucking fair old bit of plastic. That is.
But do they not make that anymore?
I can't see it on the Forge World website.
I'm not surprised.
I wonder why.
Just going back to 3D printing a sec, one thing I was going to mention on it was, I mean, the quality's getting better, isn't it? But if you look at some of these in detail, you can certainly see that it's been 3D printed, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. There's a level
I think
of finish
people are less bothered about that with terrain, aren't they?
Yeah, because it goes back to the point you made earlier about it just being on the periphery, isn't it? It's not something you really focus on when you're having a game. It's the eye glances over it and focuses in on the actual models themselves.
Yeah. I mean, you can give it a quick sand and a spray job, and chances are you won't even know it's 3D printed.
At the end of the day, I can see 3D printing taking over from regular casting. It's just going that way. It's getting better and better.
Up to the standard of normal GW quality. Yeah, I saw a 3D printing of a Dreadnought, and it was awful.
Yet.
Yeah, it can be. I think
yes.
it depends on the equipment that you're using. There's going to be different standards of 3D printers, the material, the quality of the design. There's a lot of different parts that are involved in this in terms of getting a decent product at the end.
Here's something I want to ask you guys. If GW sold a piece of terrain unique to your particular faction in 40k, would you buy it? It had no rules whatsoever. It just looked like something that you'd find on your...
Obviously, if I like the look of it, I'd buy it.
Yeah, I would say I probably would. I know there is for Eldar, and that was something I was going to move on to next. Yeah, I know there is I forget what it is now. It's the something forest, isn't it? I think I can't remember.
Eldritch Forest, something like that.
I can't remember. Yeah, but yeah, I quite like the terrain. It kind of gives your board a nice theme if you are like an Eldar player. So for me, when I do start collecting terrain for my own board, then yes, I probably would consider purchasing that, because obviously I do have my own Eldar army.
Yeah, it just seems weird, because I think there'd be a market out there for it. I mean, Imperium have got terrain for days, but I suppose Tau have got their little bastion things, little barricades and whatnot, which you can have. They've got their own rules, but I suppose you can have them as bits of terrain.
Yeah, you don't have to use the rules for them. And I know we've already discussed this before the podcast. It's like the same with the Eldar Webway Gate, that I've got and I've painted up now. It's a beautiful feature, and I can't, for what I've got in my current army list, I don't see the benefit of incorporating that as part of my actual list for the game. However, it would look great on the board, so I wouldn't use it as as with its rules as part of my list. I would just have it on there as a terrain feature that maybe is part of an objective or part of a mission narrative.
Yeah, I know Forge World used to sell Tyranid terrain. It used to sell, I think, the capillary towers, the large spines that come out of the world when it's being eaten by the Tyranids, and spawning pools. Used to sell them a long time ago. Really missed out there. I wish I grabbed some when I was looking at it way back when. But yeah, I think there's a potential market there. I mean, for well, I'll say that. I mean, obviously GW knows better because they've got access to all that information, but I'd like to think there'll be a market out there for that. I'm just ashamed they just don't do it unless you want to play on an Imperial world.
But this is the thing, there probably isn't all that much demand for it. And I reckon that sort of thing as well, most people, when it comes to terrain, it's kind of like an additional passion project. So especially with Tyranid stuff, with it being so organic in nature in a way, it must be I would say relatively easy to create your own, just using good old-fashioned sort of hobbycraft skills and paper mache, etc., to create these towers and these spawning pools.
Fairly easy, he says. Have you ever tried?
No, I'm basing that just
You don't know what you're talking about.
Hey, I did art and design back in high school and college, right? I reckon it'd be no problem.
Anyway, we only got to number 2 on the list of material types.
Oh, geez. All right, coming back around to that old subject. Go on.
Number 3, we've got printed card.
Oh, get out. Why? See, you just
no, don't poo-poo this, right? There are some people that will buy this. They'll just want something quick they can smash together so they can get a game out. There might be new players that have just brought their army and maybe painted half of it, and they just want to get a game going. But you can't play without any terrain, can you?
Well, it depends what kind of game you want to play. I mean, 2 gun lines armies.
A boring one.
A boring one, yeah, I suppose.
Oh, so particular Marine faction, maybe.
Yeah, it's just what I'm saying, though, is it's fairly cheap, easy to put together. It looks decent at a glance.
Right, okay. I'm going to call you out on
it,
that. Have you got any supporting imagery for this? You've just said it looks decent at a glance. I want evidence. Right.
Well, you said you didn't want a slideshow, so I haven't put anything together. But give me a few minutes.
I mean, when you say glance, I mean, do I have to be going in a moving car and glance out my window? Does it look all right then, as I'm going past it? Is it that kind of glance? I mean, can I sit for 3 hours and suspend my disbelief for that long, to get through a game, or longer?
I gotta admit, this seems like such a a big ask. I can't see myself being in favour of this.
Or me and you just being massive snobs, Chris.
I've already said, when it comes to the hobby, I've become a little bit of a snob in terms of the quality, because we've been spoilt by GW in terms of what they've been producing of late. I'm you know, I can't, like, I get so, I want to be immersed in the game. I love the hobby. I love the lore. I love reading the books, as and when I actually get around to doing that. I love just to be absorbed into it and to just kind of imagine everything taking place. And if I've got 3D, if I've got printed cardboard as terrain, I just, a little part of my soul dies.
Well, perhaps, Chris, it's not all about that. Perhaps some people just want to get together, have a quick game, and just have a night with their mates. You ever thought about that? You fucking dick.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. I've got no issue with that, but that's not what I look for, and I just think it's tacky, and it has no place in the hobby, so get out.
No place in the hobby at all. Okay.
Get out of here.
Hey, Chris, listen, I agree that I do prefer the more quality stuff, but...
Hang on, have a butcher's at that.
I saw this earlier, right? It just... Yeah, it looks okay.
It's fine.
No, I'm sorry, but like I said, this kind of smacks of the terrain of 15 years ago when I was a kid from GW.
I was just about to say that.
It does.
Yeah.
It looks... And it's fine, but it doesn't belong on a 40k... table.
Doesn't it?
No, it doesn't.
Why?
I can imagine.
You just say that?
No, I think this is perfect for the smaller games, the side games that they have, like
I've been meant to
Kill Team or Space Hulk, those sorts of games. Fine, great, perfect. On a 40k board, no.
Wow, you
sorry.
have become a snob. Look down your nose at me.
No, get the 3D card out of here.
Yeah.
And pass me my sneering wine.
I don't know. Maybe it's because
we haven't all got well-paid jobs, Chris. Some of us are 12 years old and they just want a game of 40k. You know?
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
They what?
Nothing. It's like I said, it's perfectly nice terrain. I just personally, it's not my cup of tea. And I am as I've already said, joking aside, I am in a very fortunate position where I can splash a little bit more cash out on these sorts of things and try and get the quality that it is I'm after. I mean, like I said, playing Kill Team, yeah, that's great. The benefit of it as well, and this is something that I am definitely in favour of, there's no painting involved. It's ready. On the periphery,
you could do that together in a couple of hours and then it's done.
But it's just looking at the small little squares that you have. It's more designed for me. That looks more in place with those particular types of games where you do have to roll to see how many sort of spaces that you move, etc. It's that sort of old-fashioned look and feel to it. And I am not knocking that particular product because it does look good for what it is. But it's in terms of a 40k game, it's not for me.
Wow, Chris, I've never seen so much backwheeling in all my life.
Wow.
Just thinking.
Wow.
It's shit.
Having said that, I'm not saying I'd buy it. I'm just listing the options for people, and that's a fairly low-cost, easy startup option.
Okay, well, just try and shift the spotlight from myself then. Jay, why wouldn't you buy it?
Because like you, I'm extremely well paid, and I've got, loads of money, so I'll just buy tiles and MDF, like a snob.
Ben, you've been quick to shame and mock both me and... Well, more so me. Would you buy it?
Me? No. God's no. I think when Jamie said printed cardboard at the beginning of this particular subject, I distinctly went, ugh. So, no, I probably wouldn't buy it. But... looking at things outside of our little bubble, I can definitely see how this is a cheaper.
There is definitely a market for it.
Exactly. Yeah.
If I was collecting or wanted to try and create a table for Kill Team, I would happily buy that. Actually, it depends on the game I'm playing. For Kill Team or the smaller games, yeah, that looks good.
Yeah, that's great for Kill Team. I mean, how much does that set you back, Jamie?
That is about 80 quid.
Right. Okay. I think Zone. What do you remember? Forge World. I don't know if they still do it. They could not do. But they did like the small Zone Mortalis stuff. I don't know if they still do it anymore. I think they were pretty pricey. I think they were 20 quid each, and you need 6 of them.
Yeah, I mean that in itself is a 2x2 tile, and there's a lot going on it. So, it just wouldn't fit on a 6x4 table. Imagine like 6 of those.
That's a lot. That's a lot going on, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think this comes back to the point that it's not designed for a big, full-scale 40k game. That is designed for the smaller games, the side games, and it. Snobbery aside, actually, for what it is, it's really good. In terms of 80 quid...
It is like on tile, though. They do loads of stuff like individual buildings and scatter terrain and stuff like that.
Yeah. I don't know, in terms of cost-wise, and is it worth the money, I don't really know how to judge it. I don't have a sort of gauge on... Is it worth that much? Is it not worth that much?
It all comes back to how often do you use it?
Yeah. And
I suppose, in the end of the day, it's, buyer's preference. If someone buys this once, plays one game on it and really enjoyed himself, can he walk away and, thinks to himself, I enjoyed that. Is that worth the amount of money spent on it? It's all up to the person who buys it, isn't it, at the end of the day?
True.
Do like asset packs and stuff with about 20 different little models in there, and it's about 14 quid. If that was resin, it'd be 50 or 60.
Mm-hmm.
Jay, so that's your number 3 in terms of material. Was there a number 4? I dread to
There
think
is a
what
number
this might
4. There is a number 4. Personally, I hate it, but unfortunately, it's a lot of people's only option when it comes to more organic shapes. It's a model in styrofoam.
Okay. Have you got any examples?
That scores very low on terms of durability.
Yeah.
As you might imagine.
Yeah.
It's, you know what I'm talking about. It's like what they make hills and stuff and like rock spires and rocks, craters and lava pools and stuff out of if they're not using resin. Obviously, for the bigger shapes, it's a lot easier because it's much cheaper and easier to deal with.
Well, with terrain, you can't really buy those natural features in resin, can you? I don't think I've seen anything for.
For the smaller scatter terrain, you can buy craters and stuff in resin and plastic, can't you?
But for like hills or rock faces, etc. I don't think I've seen anything like that from
it's pretty much going to be your only sort of avenue if you want that kind of look.
Now, from the various battle reports that I've seen online, that stuff actually looks quite good. Again, at a glance.
I was about to say that. You can make it look nice.
The majority of it comes, already and pre-painted.
That's an interesting point, though, with sort of styrofoam and that sort of material, because it's going to be quite absorbent, I would imagine. So, do you end up, wasting more paint on trying to get that stuff done? I mean, if it's already pre-painted, then great. But
I would probably think they spray it and they would probably add some bits like glue sand and grass to it to make it that. You've got to be careful looking, but then again, that is going to add cost to it.
Durability is going to be terrible on it, like you said.
Yeah, if you look at it, you get a dent in it.
Yeah. You've got to be careful with that kind of stuff as well, because if you just use, like, say, earlier, Chris, we went to Halfords to have some of this paint. If you use the wrong kind of paint, it will eat away at it.
Yeah, it'll just destroy it.
It will just absolutely annihilate it. Yeah.
That's why if I was going to buy something like that, I would get ready-made stuff.
You meant to PVA seal it, though, aren't you?
I don't know, to be honest.
Yeah, I think you are meant to PVA seal a lot of this stuff because, like I said, otherwise the paint will just melt it, and you can go for from a nice hill to some sort of horrible battered. Well, the look might work for you. Some battered, horrible blasted rock that's been hit by a little las cannon fire, which might work for you, I suppose.
But you've got to then paint it, otherwise you're just going to have white chunks.
Well, the idea is the spray paint you just use has melted it, so it'd look horrible, basically. It looks like scorched earth. If you're playing on a board...
Try and make it work that was intentional.
Yeah, if you're playing on a board that's on a planet that's just been hit by exterminatus, it might work.
Yeah, true. That'd be interesting look and feel, actually. Short of a used pizza box then, Jay, what Ben pretty much mentioned at the start of the podcast, is there a number 5, dare I ask?
I couldn't think of one, unless you can.
No.
Unless you chisel it out of stone.
Legos? You can use Lego, I suppose. If you're fucking really, really hard up on, anything else. At the end of the day, it's all about how much you're willing to suspend your disbelief. If you're dying to get a game in, and the only thing you've got is a few tins and whatnot, you can make do with that. It's all about, how you want to play your hobby at the end of the day.
Yeah. I remember when I was 12 and I just played a game on the carpet with a few boxes and whatnot.
Yeah,
you make
been there. That is a very good point, and ultimately it is your game, and if terrain really isn't all that of much of an importance to you, then don't worry about it, I guess. Just make it work for you, and as long as you get the enjoyment out of it, that is the main, I guess, the main take from it.
How on a quick one, I know I've already I've already given my opinion on this, but how much terrain would you guys like on a board? Because I've already said I'd really like to play Cities of Death, like really dense, full of terrain. But I don't know, that wouldn't work too well with some other armies, would it?
Yeah, I was going to come back to this, actually. I've got a little bit of a bugbear when it comes to too much terrain. I mean, I like my monolith, yeah? It's a great model. The rules are terrible, but I like using it. And in the last game, I was forced to use it because of our new house rule. And I couldn't put it on the board. I could bring it in, but I wouldn't have been able to move it. And it's far too easy for you to just outmaneuver it because I can't go anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And there wasn't a huge amount of terrain on the board, but if you start adding bits and pieces all over the place, there's nowhere I'm going to be able to put some models.
Isn't the monolith a flyer, though?
Yeah, it flies 6 inches a turn, Chris.
Ah.
Thing is with that, though,
it can't get past a lot of terrain and it can't sit on top of it.
Can you imagine if, you built an army?
Actually, just very quickly on that point, though, Jay, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty certain in the main core rules it does state that if you cannot place a model on terrain, you basically just put it to where you can actually purchase it, or where it can actually sit without falling over, and you say it's actually there. So if you wanted it to sit on top of a building, it can be there. It might not be able to physically sit there because it'll fall off and break, but you can put maybe something there just to represent that's where the actual model should be placed in the game.
Yeah, it's great in theory, but in practicality, when you're playing a game, it's something you don't want to deal with.
No, I was just about to say, Chris, that's all well and good, but I think it also says in the rules for Deep Strike, if you can't physically fit your model in there, it counts as destroyed. Isn't that something? I mean, I know in that last game, because Jamie played me, it was just like, right, I know he's got to bring his monolith in, so basically what I'll do is I'll use my gaunts to go over here, and basically I've just herded his model into one place. And now his monolith couldn't move. And now his monolith is fighting gaunts. Win-win chicken dinner.
Yeah, I guess that's the flip side to the issue of trying to balance out the game in terms of for shooting focused armies and melee focused. I know we've talked about this already plenty. Personally, I would prefer to have, even though I'm an Eldar player, most of the time. So I'm a very shooting focused army as it is. I would prefer still to have a lot of terrain on the board, purely because one, I like the look and feel of it. I think one, it's more tactical as well because you have to be more aware of which way you're sending your units to get around into the positions that you need them to be in and to draw line of sight. But I also feel, because it's only the three of us that ever play each other at this stage, Ben, you have a sheer disadvantage being melee. Well, I wouldn't. Sheer maybe is too harsh of a word. You do have a disadvantage being primarily melee focused on a lot of your units. That just means that with units like my Dark Reapers and other units as well, which are very good in long range,
No way.
I'm going to be able to blow you off the board before you've been able to utilize them, or at least give you a chance of using them in the game. So having more terrain.
It doesn't matter how much terrain's on a board. You're always going to pick something out.
Okay, what about this? Okay, because you're not the only one, Jamie, with a model that is completely busted as far as dimensions go. You know my Toxic Cream, the one with the tentacles?
Yeah.
That was advertised when it was released. Look, it's as wide as a Beyblade. Great. That's brilliant. I like a monstrous creature that's not as good as a Beyblade, that's as wide as a Beyblade. Imagine if I rocked up, or Jamie rocked up to a club, and they were and their terrain was, their board's set up in such a way that we couldn't physically use these models. We just bought them. We can't use them because we're already at a disadvantage. Fair enough, we might be able to put them down, but we can't move them anywhere. Not without saying, this building's in the way, that building's in the way. You're already at,
There are a lot more large models in the game than there used to be as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's all right if you've got like a slender knight like you've got, Chris. I mean, it doesn't expand.
On that point, though, the base is still quite big.
Yeah, but it doesn't tend to reach outside of its oval base that much. I mean, I know the Knights, the Imperial Knights have got sort of like, they stretch out with the guns and whatnot, but Monolith, it's got a big old footprint, and so is my Toxicrene.
I think every time I've used it, you've just managed to herd me into a corner and then force me to combat with gauntlets, and then it's just stuck there. It's 300 points I can't do anything with.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a weird one because, going on the point or comparing the Monolith to the Wraith Knight, in terms of the actual width of the base, I would argue that it's probably not too far off the base of the Monolith. However, because it's an oval shape, what I can do is turn it sideways and move it into a gap.
Mm-hmm.
Which isn't really realistic. Can you imagine the Wraith Knight basically just doing side steps through streets to get in? It doesn't really work.
Quite flat.
Whereas with the Monolith, you don't have that ability, so that's where I do have the advantage, I guess.
Well, that, and you've got a bigger movement profile. I mean, the Monolith's got a 6-inch fly. Whoop-de-doo.
Yeah, I know. It's not my fault that his model's shit, though.
No, it's not. But what I'm saying is, like, if you rocked up to a club and their terrain was set out in such a way that one of your models, the bigger models, is physically, it's physically hampered just by how the terrain's set up. I want to play Cities of Death, but I couldn't bring half of my big stuff.
Okay. That's okay, but on that point though, that you're also on an even pegging with your opponent because they won't be able to bring their big stuff. So I guess this is where it comes into it, where if you were turning up and you had no idea, you'd already produced an army list ahead of a game and you had no idea what the terrain or board was going to be like, then yes, being confronted with that would be quite probably unfair. However,
that's it.
If you've already sort of announced, yes, we're going to be playing and we're going to be playing City of Death, if you decide that you're going to bring your big monstrous creatures, which are going to have a very difficult time moving around that board, that is your decision. So I think where this comes, it's basically having that agreement or being aware of what the type of board it is that you're going to be playing on, ahead of the game, so you can cater your list for it. Because how much? In a way, that's also kind of in keeping with a narrative sense, because most armies are going to have an idea of where it is they're going to be dropping in.
Oh, you want to be careful using that narrative thing, because a lot of things in the 40k universe could just annihilate buildings, and this would be a problem.
Yeah, I mean,
and a Monolith can fly.
It can only go so far, though, can't we? I mean, in terms of the realism. But that pretty much covers everything we had down to discuss today. I'm just very aware of the time. So, is there anything else that you guys just want to finish on before we go?
Don't go out and spend 500 quid on a Catachan Kernel. Don't.
Yes.
Just don't do it.
Seconded. Don't do it. Instead, spend 480 quid on 6 tiles instead. That's a much better investment.
Yeah, I'd argue you get better use out of them.
Jamie, anything to finish on?
No, I'm just sad now because you were reminding me how shit my Monolith is.
And on that note, thank you very much for listening, guys, and we'll see you in the next episode.
See you later.
Bye.